Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Committee of Adjustment meeting for the Township of Georgian Bay for Friday, August 12th, 2022. This morning, there is a public meeting scheduled for 4 consents and 4 minor variance applications. I'll briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized for the meeting. First, the Secretary-Treasurer will advise the committee as to when, how, and to whom notice of each of the hearings was circulated for the applications being considered. Next, each of the applications will be considered separately. Planning staff will advise of the purpose and effect of the applications and provide any other information that is relevant. The Secretary-Treasurer will summarize any correspondence on file. From there, the applicant may make a brief presentation if they so choose, and the public will have an opportunity to speak to the applications being considered. After the public forum, the committee will then deliberate on the proposed applications and consider a motion to pass, defeat, or defer the decision of the applications. The consent applications being considered this morning as B22-06-09 for 78 Island Drive, 73 Island Drive, 89 Island Drive, and 94 Island Drive. Minor variance applications being considered this morning are A2203 for 438 Hiawatha Road, A22-04 for 2 Island 60 Severn River, A2205 for 6620 Go Home Lake Shore, and A22-06 for 6992 Go Home Lake Shore. Before we begin, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. You would have received a copy of the minutes from our previous meeting on July 15th, 2022. I have a resolution moved by Member Jarvis and seconded. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves the minutes of July 15th, 2022 as circulated. All those in favor, please raise your hand. The motion is carried. I have a further resolution moved by Member Caddo and seconded. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment adopts the agenda dated August 12th, 2022. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. The motion is carried. To the Secretary-Treasurer, please.
Notice of each of the applications was sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120 meters, 500 meters, or 800 meters, and to those persons and agencies likely to have an interest in the application. The notices were sent at least 20 days prior to this morning's meeting. Including in each notice was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the application and a key map showing the location of the property. Other relevant information may also have been provided. These circulations were provided in accordance with the Planning Act 1990.
Thank you. Our first application this morning is a consent application, number B22-06 through 09 for a series of locations on Island Drive. To the planner, please.
Morning. My name is Allie. I will be presenting this application on behalf of my colleague, Adam. Just waiting here to get permission to share my screen.
You should be okay now, Allie.
Perfect. There we go. Thank you. Okay. Can everyone see this okay?
Yes.
Great. So the applications are to legalize the access to 7 existing residential properties on Island 96 that are accessed by a private road known as Island Drive. There's 4 concurrent applicants. They've submitted on behalf of the owners 73, 78, 89, and 94 Island Drive, with each property being traversed by Island Drive. The proposal will not result in the creation of any new lots or development or site alteration, and based on a review of the relevant planning policies, staff recommend the approval of the applications for a legal right-of-way. So here are the subject lands. They are generally located along the shoreline of Gloucester Pool, west of Neptune Islands. The outlined parcels are the properties of the 4 applicants. Island Drive extends across the 4 applicants' properties, and the remaining 3 properties have driveways emerging from the road, but the road does not cross their land directly. Here's an aerial view of the subject property. Suggests that the lands are occupied by low-density residential dwellings and are also surrounded by similar shoreline residential development. The subject properties are designated rural lands in the PPS. In terms of the policy analysis, right-of-ways are not directly regulated or governed by the PPS. However, it does note that healthy, livable, and safe communities are sustained by necessary infrastructure, and public service facilities are or will be available to meet current and projected needs. The subject lands are designated waterfront in the District of Muskoka official plan. They are adjacent to a provincially significant wetland and adjacent to the Trent-Severn waterway. They've also been identified as having high to very high potential for archaeological resources. Section K1B of the district OP provides that the district shall facilitate safe and efficient movement of people and goods within Muskoka. Since there's no development or site alteration proposed through these applications, staff are of the opinion that the PSW, the Trent-Severn waterway, and the archaeological resources are not a concern at this time. Based on a review of the relevant policies, planning staff are of the opinion that the applications are consistent with the PPS and conform to the general intent of the District of Muskoka official plan. Subject properties are designated waterfront and other road in the township's official plan. They are adjacent to a PSW as well as a type 1 and type 2 fish habitat. Residential development is a permitted use in the designated waterfront area, and as such, the existing uses are permitted on the lands. Staff note that the PSW and the fish habitat is not a concern at this stage, as the proposal does not include any development, lot creation, or site alteration. The OP states that consents may be permitted for technical or legal reasons that do not result in the creation of a new lot, such as a right-of-way. The proposed applications for consent represent a right-of-way access, which is permitted pursuant to the above noted policies of the official plan. Planning staff are of the opinion that the applications conform to the general intent of the Township of Georgian Bay's official plan. Subject properties are zoned shoreline residential type 1 in the township zoning bylaw. They contain detached residential dwellings which are permitted in the SR1 zone. The proposed right-of-way does not impact the existing lot areas or coverage, but instead it would establish legal access to surrounding properties over the portions of Island Drive that are within private ownership. Planning staff are of the opinion that the applications conform to the township zoning bylaw. Here's an image of the proposed right-of-way. Based on a review of the relevant planning policies, staff recommend the approval of the consent applications for a right-of-way for 73, 78, 89, and 94 Island Drive. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bradley. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence on this application?
One letter of no objection was received from the District of Muskoka, and one letter of support was received from Jane Milligan.
Thank you. Do we have any representative of the applicant in attendance today? I don't see anyone. So
the agent for the application is present, Wayne Simpson.
Okay, Mr. Simpson, is there anything that you wish to add to the planner's comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. No, Ali's done a great job of summarizing it. My clients are just simply trying to formalize an arrangement that's existed sort of rather loosely over the years, and together they've cooperated to prepare the reference plan and to proceed with this application. So we appreciate the committee's consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Is there any member of the public that's present and wish to comment on this application? I see a couple of extra names down there that are muted. Madam Secretary, is there anyone else that's indicated they want to address this application?
Let me just take a quick look. I don't see any more hands raised. I don't think anyone else would like to speak. I'll try one more time to move them over. We'll just give them a moment if they'd like to speak.
Okay.
Ms. Hutchinson, if you have anything to say, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. The connection at the cottage is very poor here. The request we made is for a road that's been in existence for over 40 years. There's been no change to it. My property is at the beginning of it. I'm number 78. And the neighborhood has all agreed to finally get it registered. So we're very grateful for this opportunity. We will not be making any changes to this road. It is what it is. And it serves well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Hutchinson. If there are no other questions or comments from the public, I'll close the public session of the meeting and bring the application before the committee for questions or comments. And we will begin with Member Caddo.
Thanks, Chair Hill. Yeah, definitely no objections here. I support this fully.
Thank you. Member Ferguson.
I totally support the application as well. I think it's great that you get all these people together and come to agreement and ensure that everyone has legal access to their property. So good for you, Lois.
Thank you.
Member Demkew.
I fully support this application.
Thank you. Member Matthews.
Again, I support it. No comments.
Member Jarvis.
I'll be supporting it, but I need to put a clarification, Ali, if you don't mind. There are a total of 6 properties that are affected by this, only 4 though that it crosses. So that's why the 4 have applied. I understand that. I see what I think is a 7th property at the very end of the road. Is that part of the process? And what number is that? What address is that on that road?
For you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Jarvis, that there's actually 7 properties.
Yeah.
So I may have said 6, but it should be 7. So there's 4 applications and 7 benefiting properties in total.
So what's the address at the end of the road then, right on the tip of that, on that point? Because it looks like the road goes onto that property, and I'm just wondering why they weren't included.
108. I'm looking it up.
Ah.
Yes, 108.
Does the road in fact go onto that property as it shows in the Schedule A? Or does it just go to the edge of the property?
Goes to the edge of the property.
Okay, that's fine. I just clarification.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
That's number 108.
Member Kuchar.
I think for clarification for Member Jarvis, the 108, nobody needs a easement over 108 because they're the end road, and you don't need an easement over your own property. I'm all in support, but I feel if Chair Hill will allow me a minor editorial, and that is I'm so glad to see this process, which I'm all too familiar with, having gone through it myself a couple of times, has made more straightforward by the township, and a long overdue change, and I applaud the township for making that change. I wish I could take credit for it, and I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no further questions or comments, I will read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment hereby grants provisional approval to the consent applications B22-06-09 for right-of-way subject to the following. 1, that municipal taxes be paid to date. 2, that a reference plan of the consent shall be prepared and duly registered by an Ontario land surveyor, and 1 copy filed with the Secretary Treasurer of the committee. A draft copy of the reference plan shall be provided to the Secretary Treasurer for review and approval prior to registration on title, if applicable. 3, that a copy of the electronic registration in preparation, draft deed for the easement, if applicable, shall be provided to the Secretary Treasurer of the committee, together with a signed acknowledgement and direction so that the consent certificate may be issued. Number 4, that all fees and disbursements, legal, engineering, and planning, if any, occurred by the township with respect to this application be paid for by the owner. And 5, that the conditions set out herein shall be completed within 2 years of the date of the decision of the committee. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. The motion is carried. The application is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll just take a moment. Madam Secretary, are there any applicants for the next application that need to join the meeting?
Yes, I will be bringing them in now.
Thank you. Okay, are we ready, Marcia?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Our next application is a minor variance application number A22-03 for 438 Hiawatha Road. To the planner, please.
Hello again. I'll share my screen. I'll be presenting this again on behalf of my colleague Adam. Oh, sorry. Everyone can see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. So the purpose of this application is to seek relief from the zoning provisions regarding a minimum front yard setback for the construction of a sunroom within the footprint of an existing deck. Based on a review of the relevant planning policies, staff recommend the approval of the application. The subject property is located along the shoreline of Gibson Lake. It has an area of approximately 0.52 hectares and a frontage of approximately 60 meters. Currently, there's a cottage on the subject property that was approved through a site plan in 2002, as well as a deck that was built with a building permit in 2018. Here's an aerial view of the subject property. You can see the single detached dwelling, some natural vegetation, and a nice sandy beach. And here's an excerpt from the survey. The applicant is proposing to remove the existing deck and replace it with a new 3-season sunroom and a new deck. The new proposed development encroaches into the front yard by 0.4 meters, which is permitted for deck encroachments in the zoning bylaw. However, to facilitate the construction of the deck, a minor variance is required to permit a front yard setback of 19.6 meters for the dwelling, whereas 20 meters is required. The proposed new sunroom and deck structure will replace the existing deck and utilize the existing footprint. The existing deck has a front yard setback of approximately 19.3 meters from the water's edge. The new proposed sunroom has a setback of 19.6 meters from the water's edge. As such, the proposed sunroom reduces the setback of the dwelling from the shoreline, but an overall net improvement is achieved in the front yard setbacks of the development on the subject property. Subject property is designated rural lands in the provincial policy statement. The PPS states that on rural lands located in municipalities, residential development that is locally appropriate is permitted, and that development that is compatible should be promoted. The subject property is occupied by a detached residential dwelling, which is compatible with the other existing shoreline residential dwellings surrounding the subject property. based on a review of the proposed minor variance is consistent with the relevant policies of the PPS. The subject property is designated as waterfront area in the District of Muskoka official plan. It's identified as having high to very high archaeological potential and is located within the deer wintering area stratum 2. Low density single unit residential dwellings are a permitted use in the waterfront area, and as such, the proposed use is permitted on the subject property. No archaeological survey is required as per the district development is minor. And deer habitat development or site alteration in stratum 2 habitat should be conserved. Conifer thermal cover should be conserved, and feeding areas and movement corridors should also be conserved. But the development does not alter any of these. Based on a review of the relevant policies, planning staff are of the opinion that the applications are consistent with the PPS and conform to the general intent of the District of Muskoka official plan. The official plan requires a 20-meter setback from the high water mark for development in waterfront designated areas. However, a lesser setback may be considered if the proposal is for an addition to an existing building and the existing setback is not further reduced. Through this application, the applicant is seeking a setback of 19.6 meters for the dwelling, resulting in a net improvement in the overall setbacks of the development. No additional impacts are anticipated on the subject property, and as such, staff are of the opinion that the application meets the general intent of the official plan. The subject property is zoned SR1, Shoreline Residential Type 1. The proposed plan conforms to all the zone requirements except for the front yard setback for the dwelling. The proposed addition of the sunroom uses the existing deck footprints. It's my understanding that the existing deck of footings were not built as per the approved building permits, but it's still passed inspection because a deck is permitted to encroach 4 meters into the required front yard. The incorrectly placed footings encroached by 0.4 meters, so it's fine for the deck, but the 0.4 meter encroachment comes into violation with the addition of the sunroom, whereas 20 meter setback is required for shoreline dwellings. Staff are of the opinion that the 0.4 meter encroachment has no significant visual or environmental impacts. Based on the above, the request for the reduced setback of 19.6 meters is reasonable and maintains the general intent of the proposed, of the purpose of the zoning bylaw. This test refers to the appropriateness of a development given the existing conditions of a property and if it is keeping with the interest of the community and general public. As previously noted, no further visual or environmental impacts are anticipated due to the proposed development, and no additional clearing of land is required. Further, an overall net improvement is achieved for the front yard setbacks for the development on the subject property. Planning staff are of the opinion that the proposed minor variance is appropriate and desirable development for the subject lands. Lastly, this test refers to the overall development proposal and if it is considered minor in nature. In this case, the applicant is requesting a reduced front yard setback from 20 meters to 19.6 for a total difference of 0.4 meters. The effect would be building an enclosed structure on an existing deck footprint, and no clearing of additional lands is required. There are no anticipated negative impacts to the character or the natural heritage of the surrounding area. Given the above, township staff are of the opinion that the requested variance is minor. Here are site photos. The upside down pails are covering the old deck footings. The old deck has been removed, and these footings are to be used for the new addition. Based on a review of the relevant planning policies, staff recommend the approval of the minor variance application to permit a minimum front yard setback of 19.6 meters to construct a new sunroom and deck. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Could I just say a quick 2 minutes here?
Gary, we'll get to you. We just have to speak to correspondence first, but you will have the opportunity to speak to your application.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Chair Hill, you're muted.
Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence in this application?
2 letters of support were received from Greg Hood and Mark Tubekeen.
Thank you very much. I do notice that there is somebody who'd like to speak here, and I expect that they are representative of the applicant. And If you wish to speak, please identify yourself with your full name and address for the record, please.
My name is Gerhard Hoyer. I reside at 22 Holloway Lane in Midhurst. My cottage is at 438 Hiawatha, where this minor variance is being applied to. I'd just like to clarify a few things. There was a few minor discrepancies with the Miss Bradford's explanation. There wasn't a deck built in 2018. What happened was I had an approved building permit to build the screen porch and the deck next to it within the required setbacks of 19.6. What happened was when I put the footings in, underneath those pales are actually new footings, which are into the bedrock. They were going to be screw piles. And originally we were going to use block piers, and Doug Humperton visited site and we had switched to screw piles, but then we found that they weren't deep enough. So we were actually right into the bedrock. Those were installed in 2019 on the original approved building permit. The problem is that the layout that I gave them was wrong. It was the original that we had thought, which is a 16-foot setback off the front of the building. And now, as you can see, we are into, we are too close to the water. So that is why now we are going for the minor. So just to explain, the old deck was pulled off with, I couldn't pull the old deck off without having a building permit. So that's why the deck is no longer existing. And the screw piles are in the ground, but they are too close to the water, which is why we are going with the minor. Also on that picture of the layout of the bird's eye with the on the survey, it shows that the deck was in the middle and the sunroom's to the right. It is actually opposite. The sunroom is in the middle and the deck is to the one side of it. Minor things, but I just wanted to clarify. I want to make sure that you guys know exactly what's going on here.
That's great. We appreciate that clarification, Mr. Hoyer. Thank you for that. Are there any other members of the public that wish to comment on this application? Do we have anybody on board, Madam Secretary?
We do have one member of the public in attendance, but I don't believe he has anything to say. Todd, if you'd like to make comments, you can just accept my request to be promoted to a panelist. So we'll give him a moment to see if he'd like to speak.
Okay, I don't see them on screen, so I expect that they were just wanting to monitor this, the proceedings. So with that in mind, we'll close the public portion of this application and bring the matter before the committee for any questions or comments. And we will begin with Member Demkew.
Thank you, Chair Hill. I visited the property yesterday, and actually I was glad Mr. Hoyer came on and explained the difference about where the locations were, because that was one of the questions I had in mind. But I don't see any problem at all with this. They're actually improving the setback. So I have no concerns with this application.
Thank you, Member Demkew. Member Coutier.
Thank you, Chair Hill. I also have with the explanations that I've heard to date, I have no issue with this application and tend to vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Jarvis.
Yeah, I have no issues with this application as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Matthews.
Thank you, Chair Hill. Yes, I have no problem with it. It's actually a net improvement, and this is one I can say that this really applies to a minor variance, in my opinion. So I would support it.
Thank you. Member Ferguson.
I have no issues at all. And we are talking here a difference of about 2 feet. So as mentioned by Member Matthews, this truly is a minor variance.
Thank you. Member Caddo.
Yes, no objections here. Very, very minor.
Okay. Thank you. With that, I will read the resolution. It is moved by Member Ferguson and seconded. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A22-03 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 438 Hiawatha Road to permit a minimum front yard setback of 19.6 meters for the construction of a sunroom with the following conditions. A, that municipal taxes are paid to date. B, that approval of this variance is granted and fixed to the subject site plan extent, location, scale, and use contemplated in the application. C, that an amendment to the existing site plan agreement, site plan control agreement be completed to reflect the changes proposed through this application. And D, that approval of this variance expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the approved structure. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried and the application is approved.
Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Where? And Madam Secretary, do we have any participants for our next application?
Yes, we do. I'm just bringing them over to the meeting now.
Thank you. Okay, looks like we have some new attendees. Our next application is A22-04 for 2 Island 60 in Severn River. To the planner, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kirsten Mancini. I'm a planner with Jill Richards, and I will be speaking to this application. Allow me to share my screen here. I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this application for the proposed minor variance, the applicant for this application is Hamstra, and their agent is Flow Drawings and Design Inc. I also believe their planning consultant is Jones Consulting. The address of the subject property is 2 Island 60 in Severn River. The purpose of this minor variance application is to facilitate an addition to a legal non-compliant dwelling, and they're asking for 5 variances. The first one is permitting an increase in gross floor area of 61%, while 25% is permitted. Second, permitting a further encroachment of 0.9 meters into the existing front yard for the porch, while further encroachment is not permitted by the zoning bylaw. Permitting a porch encroachment with porch projection of 2.9 meters into the required front yard, while 2 meters is permitted by the zoning bylaw. The fourth one is permitting development within the natural state shoreline area, while the zoning bylaw does not permit development within 15 meters of the shoreline. And lastly, recognizing the existing front yard setback of 5.5 meters for the dwelling. Here's a location map of the subject property, which is an unsubdivided island, generally located north of Able Island in Leduc Bay of Little Lake. Here's an aerial view of the subject property. The subject property has an area of approximately 0.37 hectares and a frontage of about 111 meters. It is currently occupied by a detached residential dwelling with an attached deck, a boathouse, and an existing shed. Aerial review suggests that the remaining land is occupied by natural vegetation. Here's a plan of survey showing the existing development on the subject property. The applicant is proposing to remove existing decks highlighted on your screen in red and replace them with a covered porch. The setback of these from the regulated water's edge is 3.6 meters. And here's a plan of survey showing the proposed development. The applicant is proposing a covered porch with an area of about 37.63 square meters. Additionally, an expansion of about 15 square meters to the existing legal non-compliant dwelling is also proposed. The proposed development would result in the dwelling and the covered porch having a total gross floor area of approximately 139 square meters. Here are a couple of 3D views which show the front view of the proposed porch. Here are the photos from a site visit conducted by staff on July 28. The first photo shows the front of the dwelling with existing decks which are proposed to be removed. The second photo shows the front of the dwelling in relation to the existing boathouse in the back. The next photo here shows the existing boathouse, and the last photo shows the shoreline in front of the existing dwelling. Moving on to the overview of the planning data associated with the subject property. The property is considered rural lands in context of the PPS. It is designated waterfront in the district official plan. Additionally, a wetland is located adjacent to the subject property. The subject property is also located adjacent to Trent Severn waterway and has a high to very high potential for archaeological resources. The subject property is designated waterfront in the township official plan, and both type 1 and type 2 fish habitat are identified on the subject property. The property is zoned shoreline residential island type 1, exception 31 in the township zoning bylaw. Noting the provisions which relate to the proposal as provided by exception 31 is a minimum front yard requirement, which is 7.5 meters for this property. And secondly, the maximum permitted GFA, which is 171 square meters for the subject property. Here's an overview of the planning analysis. The applicant's proposal is consistent with the PPS as existing residential uses are permitted on rural lands. The proposed development is on an island and is compatible with the surrounding low-density residential development across the water along the other edge of the shoreline. The proposal conforms to the district official plan as residential uses are permitted in waterfront designations. Also, the existing development has a legal non-compliant setback of 5.4 meters on the subject lands. The proposed development will not encroach further into the required front yard. The proposed porch will have a setback of 4.6 meters from the water's edge, which will replace the decks which have a setback of 3.6 meters. As such, a net improvement in the existing setbacks is achieved. The applicant has submitted confirmation from Parks Canada that no further studies are required to address the Trent Severn waterway. The expansion of the existing cottage is also not considered a major development, hence an archaeological assessment is not required at this time. Moving on to the overview of the 4 tests of the minor variance. The proposal maintains the general intent of the official plan as these lands will continue being used for residential purposes. The applicant has also submitted a fish habitat assessment report, which notes that the temporary impacts associated with the proposal are minimal and mitigable, and the permanent impacts are not significant enough to result in harmful impacts to the fish habitat or the surrounding lake environment. I would like to note here that the report is currently with our environmental consultants for peer review. Further, section D.2.2.4.2 of the official plan states that a maximum target of 75% of the linear shoreline to be maintained in a natural state to the targeted depth of 15 meters back from the shoreline, but it allows for some flexibility where the lands are already developed. The applicant is not proposing additional clearing of lands along the shoreline. The area of the porch expansion is existing development in the form of decks. The development expansion is proposed towards the rear and has no impact on shoreline vegetation. As such, the OP target is being met to the extent feasible. Staff are therefore of the opinion that the general intent of the official plan is maintained. Moving on to the intent of the zoning bylaw, the existing GFA of the property is 86.22 square meters. The applicant is proposing an increase of 52.9 square meters for a total GFA of 132.9 square meters. Although the proposal is in excess of the maximum expansion provisions, the overall total proposed GFA is less than the maximum permitted for the subject property by exception 31 to the zoning bylaw. The proposal complies with the lot coverage provisions of the zoning bylaw as well. The applicant is proposing an encroachment of 0.9 meters for the porch, while further encroachment into the front yard is not permitted. The proposal, however, achieves a net improvement in the setback situation, as the existing setback of the decks from the shoreline is 3.6 meters, while the proposed setbacks of the porch are 4.6 meters. The applicant is also requesting a projection of 2.9 meters into the required front yard for the porch, while 2 meters is permitted. The required front yard for the property is 7.5 meters, which means that the porch is required to be set back 5.5 meters from the water's edge, while the applicant is proposing a setback of 4.6 meters. As previously noted, despite the increased projection, the proposal provides a net improvement in setbacks from the shoreline, and the request is reasonable. The next variance request is for the porch to be erected within the natural state shoreline area. The majority of the existing development is already located within 15 meters of the water's edge. Special exception 31 to the zoning bylaw allows development with a shoreline setback of 7.5 meters on this property. The applicant is not proposing to further disturb the shoreline vegetation, and the proposed development is largely on already developed lands. Lastly, the variance to recognize the existing front yard setback of 5.5 meters is reasonable, as the dwelling is an legal existing structure. Based on the above, staff are of the opinion that the proposed variances conform to the general intent of the Township of Georgian Bay zoning bylaw. Next test is the desirability of the proposal. As previously noted, the proposal will result in net improvement in setbacks of the development and no negative impacts to the environmental features are anticipated. I note that the porch will have increased visual impact as compared to a deck, but when viewed as an extension of the existing dwelling, the anticipated cumulative impact is minimal. The last test is that the variances requested be minor. Despite the expansion, the proposed GFA is well below the maximum permitted GFA of 171 square meters. The variances related to the porch encroachment are also minor, as they support an overall improvement in the setback situation. The request for development in natural state shoreline area is minor, as these lands are already developed. And lastly, the variance for front yard setback of the dwelling recognizes the existing setback. Overall, the requested variances meet the 4 tests of the minor variance. Based on this discussion, staff recommend approval of the application on the basis that the proposal complies with the PPS, conforms to the district official plan, and meets the 4 tests of the minor variance. Staff recommend that the application be approved with the conditions, which among others include that the completion of peer review of the fish habitat study submitted by the applicant be completed, and addressed of any comments provided by the environmental consultant be addressed to their satisfaction. That was my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions now.
Chair Hill, you're muted.
And in conclusion, Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence on this application?
No correspondence has been received.
Thank you very much. Do we have any representative of the applicant in attendance? And if so, would they wish to speak to this application? Anything you'd like to add, Ms. Huffman?
Sure. Good morning, guys. It's Victoria Hoffman from Flow Drawings, 3 Violet Drive, Port Severn. I think the planner did a good job presenting this. I'm here if you have any design questions, but we've also brought in Brandy Clement from Jones Consulting, and the owner is also here. To start, I'm going to pass it off to Brandy.
Good morning. Sorry, now I'm trying to lower my hand. There we go. I actually do have a brief presentation as well, so I'm hopeful that Marcia can share that for me.
Absolutely. I'll just have Sydney get the presentation up on the screen so we can go ahead and get started with it.
Thank you. So good morning. My name is Brandy Clement, and I am with Jones Consulting, and I'm here on behalf of our client to present the minor variances. It was already presented in great detail, so I will try to keep it as brief as I can, but I feel that there are, 5 of them, and they do involve a little bit of discussion. So if you would not mind turning to the next slide, please. So just to summarize again, we are requesting a total of 5 variances, some of which are related to the fact that the current structure on the lands is considered to be a legal non-conforming structure. So the first recognizes that there is an existing front yard setback of 5.5 meters where the bylaw requires 7.5. The second permits the dwelling and the covered porch to have the gross floor area increased to 61%, where the bylaw only does allow 25%, but this is if a dwelling is located closer than 10 meters at its closest point from the front lot line. So again, because it's an existing structure, this is the case. To permit the covered porch to encroach 0.9 meters further into the 5.5 meter front yard. Right now, the bylaw says that this cannot be permitted as an encroachment. The fourth, to permit the porch to project a total of 2.9 meters into the front yard, where the bylaw only allows 2. And then lastly, to permit the dwelling and the covered porch to continue to be located within the natural state shoreline area, where the bylaw requires that within 15 meters of the high water mark in this zone, this area be maintained in its natural state. Next slide, please. So this is the site plan that we submitted on the far right, and then we sort of just did a little blow up of that in the middle. The lands are located on an island. As we know, they're within Little Lake on the Severn waterway. It's an unsubdivided island. The lot area is approximately 3,700 square meters or 0.37 hectares. There is existing development on the lands with the dwelling as well as some smaller detached buildings, and all of it's located on the north end of the island. The area that you're seeing identified in the middle of this screen in green represents the existing footprint of the dwelling. So that has an area of approximately 86 square meters. The smaller rectangular area, I'll call it, in the sort of northeast corner of the dwelling is the addition that's being proposed, and that is 15 square meters. The other area that's outlined in red is the proposed covered deck, and that has an area of 37.63 square meters. As noted, there are 2 existing decks that are on the front of the property closer to the shoreline. These will be removed. They currently have a total area of 31.95 square meters. So today, the existing total footprint area with the dwelling and the 2 attached decks is 118.17 square meters. The proposed total footprint area with the dwelling, the addition to the dwelling, and the proposed covered deck area will be 139.18 square meters. So it's an overall increase of 21 square meters, which is around 226 square feet. And again, that includes the dwelling and the covered porch. So it's minimal changes to the siting of the structures and where they're located. And in fact, as it's been mentioned, the covered porch itself will be located further away from the shoreline than the attached decks are today. The next slide, please. So again, this just gives you, again, a better idea of what we're explaining with the variances. So on the left side, that's the existing footprint in red of the dwelling. And then the areas that are not shaded in are the attached decks. If you go to the area on the left, again, you see in red the footprint of the existing dwelling. The bluey purpley area is the addition to the dwelling, and then the green area shows the proposed covered porch area. So you can see how the configuration of the porch certainly changes, but less impactful to the shoreline as it doesn't extend out from the dwelling as far. The next slide, please. So this shows you the difference in the elevations today on the left and the elevations proposed on the right side, and the sort of minimal changes that you'll see from an aesthetics point of view on the elevations. The next slide, please. Again, in the policies, the lands are designated waterfront in both the district and the township's official plan, and they are zoned shoreline residential island type 1 exception 31 in the zoning bylaw. The next slide, please. So just to go back through the 4 tests of the minor variance, the first one being, does the request maintain the general intent of and purpose of the official plan? The variances are supporting a use that's permitted in the waterfront designation. The front yard setback and the gross floor area development standards are not identified in the official plan. The official plan does note that a minimum setback of 20 meters from the high water mark is required for development, but that a smaller setback could be considered if the proposals for an addition to an existing building and the existing setback is not further reduced. So the development certainly isn't further reducing the existing setback. And in fact, it's in the case of the covered porch, it's increasing that setback. The official plan also notes that a minimum target of 75% of the linear shoreline will be maintained in a natural state, which is a targeted depth of 15 meters from the shoreline. But where a lot is developed, the target can be achieved to a lesser extent where feasible. So the additional development is located primarily in the area that's already disturbed. So we're not increasing this disturbance on the property. And lastly, as it's been mentioned, Parks Canada was consulted prior to the submission. Because of the property being located within the Trent-Severn waterway, and they had no issues with the proposed works. So it's my opinion that the variances do continue to maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan. The next slide, please. So second test, does the request maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? We're not proposing to alter any permitted uses. The first variance will recognize an existing setback that is there today. The next variance to increase the size of the gross floor area of the dwelling to 61%, the dwelling and the covered porch. The fishery impact assessment that was completed for the lands has concluded that the development will not have a negative impact on the sensitive fish habitat features. And this report is also being peer reviewed. The overall lot coverage with the buildings when completed will only be 5%. Permitted gross floor area in the bylaw of a dwelling is 171 square meters. And we're proposing with the dwelling and the attached porch, covered porch, 139. So we're still well within that. The next two variances deal with the encroachment of the covered porch into the front yard setback. So the deck does encroach a total of 2.9 meters, making the front yard setback for the porch once erected 4.6 meters. The attached decks today are located 3.6 meters from the shoreline. So this is a net benefit of 1 meter. There'll be no additional land disturbance as a result of the development. We're still providing adequate buffering to the lake, and there's no impact to any surrounding land uses. And the last variance to permit the proposed development to be located within the natural state shoreline area. Again, this area is currently disturbed with the existing decks that will be removed. There's no additional impact in this particular area, and there's no trees that need to be removed to construct these items. So in my opinion, the variances that we are requesting do continue to maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. The next slide, please. So test 3 is a request desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, building, or structure. The lands are located on an island. There are no adjoining neighbors. The addition to the existing structure will continue to provide buffers where available. It provides a better situation regarding the distance to the shoreline than exists there today. The lands are previously disturbed, so there's no additional impact to the landscape or tree removal. So in my opinion, the variances that we're requesting are desirable for the appropriate development of this property. And next slide, next and last slide, please. So lastly is the request for the variances considered minor in nature. The proposed built form on this lot has existed there today for approximately 30 years. The footprint of all of the structures is still considered nominal at the 5% lot coverage. Property's developed already. There's disturbance adjacent to the shoreline. The proposal does not increase the impact to the shoreline. There is no negative impact to the fish habitat as a result of the development per the fisheries impact assessment. The development's compatible with the neighboring development across the waterway. It's the same built form, the same low density built form. The development continues to provide the buffers where possible. The land will continue to be serviced by individual septic and wells. Therefore, in my opinion, the variances requested are considered to be minor in nature. So that does conclude my presentation. I appreciate you providing the time for me to do so. and we respectfully request that the committee approve these variances as requested. Certainly, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Clement, for that. Very comprehensive. Are there any members of the public that wish to address this application? Do we have anyone in attendance, Madam Secretary?
There are no members of the public in attendance today.
Okay, with that, I'll close the public session of the application review and bring the matter before the committee for any questions or comments. And we'll begin with Member Ferguson.
Certainly a lot going on. However, I'm in favor of this application. I think that the way they've laid out the design and where they want to replace structures, take decks off, is concentrated in a fairly small area given the overall size of the island, and that the total size of the dwellings are well within the total lot coverage that's allowed, and so I don't have a real problem with it.
Thank you very much, Member Ferguson. Member Coutier.
Thank you, Chair Hill. I think I agree with Member Ferguson. I think overall, I mean, the covered porch will have a bit of a visual impact that's not there now, but it's in the developed area and between the boathouse and what is a relatively modest cottage. And so therefore, I don't have difficulty with this application. I will be voting in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Coutier. Member Jarvis.
I'll admit, when I see the words non-compliance and 61% increase, I get a little bit concerned. And really what it comes down to for me is just a clarification. In what context is the current structure non-compliant? Is it just a setback?
Ms. Sani, could you respond to that, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the required front yard setback of the development at this time is 7.5 meters, but it is currently set back 5.5 meters from the shoreline at its closest point. So that is what makes the structure legally non-compliant, but building permits have been issued for the development, so it is a legal structure.
Okay, so I mean, in my mind, that's even kind of minor in its own context. Yeah, I find myself in agreement with Mr. Coutier on this, and Member Ferguson seem to be cleaning things up a bit, and it's all within the envelope of things that are already there. So I'm happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Jarvis. Member Caddo.
Thanks, Chair Hill. This property I surveyed it probably about, I don't know, 15, 18 years ago for a previous owner. So I know it quite well. It's definitely looking a lot better than it did back then. You know, great improvements. The 61% threw me off a little bit until Ms. Clement kind of explained with the existing decks and all that. So I think it's going to be a nice addition, and I don't have any problems with it.
Thank you. Member Matthews.
Thank you, Chair Hill. I agree with Member Caddo. I do appreciate Ms. Clement's explanation. I think we all were a little taken back at a 61% increase. If you calculate the deck as she did, and we're going from 118 square meters to 139 square meters, it's only an 18% increase. So it's well within the 25% allowed. If the deck had been above grade, I guess, is where the timing comes into. So I have no problems with this. It seems like a net improvement, and I would support it.
Thank you, Member Matthews. Member Demkew.
Thank you, Chair Hill. Yeah, the 61% jumped at me right away, and it's still as a concern in my mind, only in terms of, I think in page 1 of Ms. Clement's presentation regarding the 61%, it says there are no policies limiting GFA. Did I hear that right? Like, if we have that, then why would we even have a percent in there?
Ms. Sandy, can you respond to that, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So there are, when a dwelling is legally existing, but it has a setback of less than 20 meters, the zoning bylaw regulates the extent of the expansion of the legally existing structure. So that So they're less than 10 meters at this point. So they can, the GFA expansion permitted is 25%. So in that context, they're requesting 61%, but the overall zoning of the property allows a GFA of 171.x%, and they're currently under it. So the expansion is regulated, but they're well within the overall GFA permitted on the subject property.
Yeah, okay, that's good. I did, like, all of the things are good in here. It still came to my mind what the 61% of that explanation helps. So I'm okay with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Demkew. So if there are no more questions or comments, I'll read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment approves minor variance application A22-04 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 2 Island 60 Severn River to facilitate the addition of a legal non-complying dwelling by permitting a gross floor area increase of 61%, recognizing the existing front yard setback of 5.5 meters for the dwelling, permitting further front yard encroachment of 0.9 meters and projection of 2.9 meters for the porch, and permitting the proposed development within the natural state shoreline area with the following conditions. A, that municipal taxes are paid to date. B, that a site plan control application be submitted and approved, and that a site plan agreement be executed detailing the proposed development in the manner prescribed by the applicable policies of the Township of Georgian Bay official plan as they relate to the administration of site plan control. And that approval of this variance is granted and fixed to the subject site plan extent, location, scale, and use contemplated in the application. And that the peer review of the fish habitat impact assessment prepared by Azimuth Environmental Consulting dated May 31, 2021 is completed, and any comments provided through this peer review be addressed by the applicant to the satisfaction of the township. Further, any mitigation measures recommended through this application shall be implemented through site plan control. And E, that all that approval of this variance expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the approved structure. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you very much. The application is approved. And we are moving on to the next matter, please. And Madam Secretary, if you'd let me know when the participants are available for the next session.
Hello, Chair Hill. I guess Marcia will be speaking first.
Yes.
I just wanted to let you know I have brought the applicants and their agent into the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. And to the planner, please.
Yes. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. Today, for the Committee of Adjustment, I am bringing forward minor variance application A2205 for 6620 Go Home Lakeshore. The applicant for this and property owner is Colleen Connor. Her agent is Victoria Hoffman of Flow Drawings and Design, Inc. And once again, the address is 6620 Go Home Lakeshore. An overview for committee. The purpose of this application is to construct a deck which requires relief from zoning provisions for permitted yard encroachments. The applicant is proposing the construction of a deck encroaching 10.53 meters into the required front yard, while the maximum encroachment of 4 meters is permitted by the zoning bylaw. Here is the location of the subject property. It is located on the shoreline of Go Home Lake towards east of the Cognisheen Lake Conservation Reserve and is legally described as 6620 Go Home Lake Shore. The subject property is surrounded by crown land to the west, low density residential development to the north and south, and then Home Lake Shore, obviously right here. The area of the subject property is approximately 0.47 hectares, and the frontage along the shoreline is approximately 60 meters. The subject property is serviced privately and is water access only. The subject property has an existing main wooden dwelling, wooden outhouse, wooden cabin as an accessory structure, 2 stone retaining walls, and 2 docks. The subject property has very steep topography sloping towards the water and a rock edge at the rear of the existing cottage. The development on the subject property is legally existing non-complying, and building permits have been issued for an addition to the main dwelling, which is currently under construction. The proposed open deck. So the purpose of this application is to construct a deck attached to the main dwelling, which extends beyond the allowable encroachment into the required front yard. The applicant is requesting relief from section 4.20 permitted yard encroachments of the Township of Georgian Bay zoning bylaw, which requires the decks are permitted to encroach a maximum of 4 meters into the acquired front yard. They are requesting an encroachment of 10.53 meters, which has a front yard setback of 9.7 meters, when a maximum encroachment of 4 meters of a front yard setback of 16 meters is permitted. This allows an encroachment relief of 6.53 meters. For committee's information, the proposed deck is going to be approximately 21.78 square meters and will be constructed just under 8 feet above grade on the side closest to the water. We can see here on the site plan, the proposed deck is located here. I know there's a few numbers kind of jumbled here. You can see that the setback is going to be 9.47 meters right here. Additionally, this structure, the wood main dwelling, is legally existing non-complying, and there's currently a building permit open for the proposed addition here. As you can see in site photos, construction is currently underway. You can see in our first photo here, the topography sloping towards the water. And again, behind the cottage, you can see the rock wall there. You can see here that this is the proposed location of the deck, just in front of this addition here. There's a building permit for this. Please see here the shoreline in front of the proposed deck location. As you can see in this photo above the rock, this would be where the deck is located, looking down the shoreline. And here is another image of the proposed deck location in relation to this addition. In analysis of the provincial policy statement, the property is designated as rural lands. In the District of Muskoka official plan, it is waterfront with moderate to high archaeological potential. In the Township of Georgian Bay bylaw, it is a waterfront property and located on an over-threshold water body with moderate sensitivity to phosphorus. This is Go Home Lake, and abuts type 2 fish habitat. For the zoning bylaw, the property is zoned SR1. It is our opinion that the provincial policy statement analysis shows that the proposed minor variance is consistent with the relevant policies and provincial policy statement, and that the proposed minor variance conforms to the applicable policies of our district official plan. I will now move forward to the 4 minor tests for the development. The proposed residential uses are permitted in waterfront designations, and no major impacts are anticipated as a result of this proposal. The uses are compatible with surrounding low-density residential uses, and the proposal does not require any expansion of municipal services as the site is privately serviced. The applicant has indicated that no trees will be removed because of the proposed deck, preserving naturalized shoreline views and reducing the visual impact of the dwelling and the deck. Additionally, the proposed deck is not encroaching further into the front yard setback as the existing dwelling. As such, construction of an open deck is not anticipated to have any additional visual or environmental impacts. Staff note that the proposed development will be subject to site plan control pursuant to policies of section D223 of the official plan, which identifies moderate sensitivity for Go Home Lake to phosphorus. Additionally, no study is required regarding fish habitat type 2. The intent of the encroachment provision in the zoning bylaw is to prevent flexibility regarding setbacks for specific uses, including decks, in recognition with historical development and topographical constraints common within the township. The applicant is not proposing to encroach further into the required front yard setback that is already existing with the dwelling. Additionally, there is no anticipated visual or environmental impacts to the shoreline views or environmental features. Staff are therefore of the opinion that the intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw are maintained. Test 3 refers to the appropriateness of development given the existing conditions on the property, and if it is keeping with the interest of the community and the public. No further visual or environmental impacts are anticipated due to this proposal. Additionally, the elevation changes on the property limit the ability to extend further away from the shoreline. Due to these constraints, the proposed location of the deck is consistent and considered appropriate. The applicant intends to maintain the existing trees in front of the deck leading down to the shoreline, which is desirable in maintaining naturalized shoreline views. Staff are of the opinion that the proposed variance is appropriate and desirable. For test 4, we are analyzing if this request is minor. This is not just a numerical determination, but minor can be evaluated through determination of impact. The proposed deck will have a front yard setback of 9.47 meters, which will not encroach further into the required front yard than the existing dwelling, which has a legal existing setback of 7.88 meters. No changes to the existing dwelling through this application, and no existing removal of vegetation is proposed. Therefore, it is recommended that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment receives Development Services Report 2022-65 and recommends approval for minor variance application A2205 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 6620 Goho Lake Shore to permit a deck encroachment of 10.53 meters into the required front yard when a maximum encroachment of 4 meters is permitted, subject to the following conditions here. Thank you very much, and I will be available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Gansos, for your presentation. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence on this application?
No correspondence has been received.
Okay, do we have the applicant or a representative that wish to comment or add additional comments to what the planners provided?
We have the agent, Victoria Hoffman, here, who has additional information to add.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Ms. Kaufman.
Good morning. As you guys know, my name is Victoria Hoffman from Flow Drawings and Design here at 3 Violet Drive, Port Severn. This variance is just for a deck encroachment. The deck encroachment is for 10.53 meters. Just a few quick highlights that I think are important that were mentioned, but just to reiterate, the existing dwelling setback is 7.88 meters, and this deck will create a setback of 9.47 meters. Also, the existing deck on the other side of the building is actually closer than that. I don't have that exact number from the surveyor, but if you look at the survey, you can tell that it's getting closer to the water in that little bay. The important part here was that we wanted to make sure that the deck didn't exceed kind of the little nook of the existing building, keeping in mind, you know, the existing trees and the existing vegetation, as well as these bylaws. Basically, the idea for this 21 square meter deck was to create a more functional outdoor space because of the natural slope on the property. They don't have a lot of space to kind of set up outdoor entertainment areas and stuff like that. The idea for this was just to create a space that kind of flowed with the existing building and also benefited the people when they were trying to enjoy the outdoors. And also, as Catherine mentioned, the trees in the front are existing, and we obviously plan to keep them there. And I think it'll, you know, really help with the impact from the water. The owner is also present here, but I think, you know, everything was gone over. And if you guys have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman. Ms. Connor, is there anything you wish to add to what's been presented so far? I see you're still muted.
Hang on one second.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm
Please.
sorry. I just wanted to say thank you very much in advance for your consideration. But I do think that Catherine and Victoria did a wonderful job of explaining what this minor variance is all about. So I really have nothing more to add. And I just hope that your recommendation is what we're after.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Connor. Madam Secretary, are there any other members of the public that wish to address this application?
There are no members of the public present.
Okay, that I'll close the public session of the application review and bring the matter before the committee for any questions or concerns. And we will begin with Member Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I have a couple of questions about process, I guess, more than anything. When you see the design of the building, looking out towards the lake, there's patio doors there. They got a building permit to put the extension on. Would the deck not have been part of that building permit? And I'm just confused on the process of how you can start to build something, the addition, but not the deck. Maybe, Catherine, you're smiling like maybe you know the answer to that. So.
Through you, Chair Hill, to Member Matthews, it is my understanding of the history of the application that maybe Victoria can speak to this afterwards, but the deck and the dwelling were originally coming together as a variance at first as one, and then upon further discussion, changes were made to the addition that would allow only a building permit for that addition. However, a variance was still required for the deck. So that's why we're here today.
Okay, thank you. Victoria,
I can add to that, yeah. Back in the winter, I believe it was Josh that I was working with. We had gone, because our original submission, the addition also exceeded the bylaw requirement. So we had gone back and forth with whatever planner it was at the time, I believe it was Josh, to kind of push and pull our proposal to see what would work. And then originally we had kind of and then we zeroed the addition in to make it compliant and then kind of move forward with that. And we pulled the deck off the proposal because we weren't sure if the owner was going to proceed with this route or not. So they got the building permit for the addition. And then as they've been going, they've realized just, what a difference this deck would make to the property. And while they're doing it, so the minor variance was kind of an afterthought, but it was like the first thought, and then it was an afterthought because we had adjusted things halfway through. It was a lot of back and forth and, tweaking it as you do.
Right, okay, appreciate that. Yes, and I think the deck would be a great improvement considering the topography of the land. The other question I had was, I noticed on the survey that there's a note at the bottom saying this is not to be used as a survey, but I thought part of the application process says you have to have a plan of survey. And I'm wondering, maybe the planner or maybe Mr. Caddo could add some enlightenment on that.
Through you, Chair Hill, to Member Matthews, it is my understanding that when I obtained this file to work on, that it was deemed a complete file with all required information given. So that's the basis that I went off of. If Member Caddo can speak to this further, I would greatly appreciate it. But if required, you can consult with the surveyor who did the original survey to ensure that this is an additional copy is presented forward if required.
Member Caddo?
Yeah, I've always kind of questioned this myself because I think for their permits and all that this would do, but I think to get the actual building permit, do they not need a actual signed survey, proper plan of survey, which to me, we haven't seen any of these in a lot of these applications lately.
Just to clarify that, Member Caddo, so you can get the difference between a signed survey and an unsigned one, what would that be?
I think the township requires, from what I understand, is they need actual plan of survey to get a building permit, but for what we're approving here, you can do a sketch or like a partial survey. But I'm thinking this is not my department, but the building department to get their building permit, I think they do need a signed survey by an OLS.
Okay, Member Kuchar, can you add something to this?
I just wanted to add the comment that in the title block at the top of the survey, it says site plan for building permit application. And it is completed by a licensed surveyor. And so we had to be assured, the township, that there was enough information on this to determine whether or not any planning permissions were required for it. And so because it has all the measurements around the building relative to the property lines and shoreline, then that serves the purpose required.
So I'm not quite sure if this is a quick question. Sorry, it's off subject here, but So when they go for the building permit, do they need a planning survey signed by a OLS?
I'm not sure how specific the bylaw is on that, so Ms. Gaudette would probably give a better answer, but all I can say, looking at this provides all the information that is required to determine whether a planning.
Yeah, it's got all your setbacks and yeah.
Yes, I'll just chime in here for everyone's benefit. For the building permit, it does need to be certified, which would be signed.
Okay.
But not for a minor variance, Ms. Gaudette?
No, though I don't expect anything would change between them.
No.
Sometimes with the surveyors being so busy, they send out the draft, the applicant submits the draft, and then months pass and they forget they haven't signed it. So that's often what happens.
Okay, and just because I know we were really getting quite particular about making sure site plans were there, and then I saw just happened to pop out at me that it said that this wasn't a survey, and just raised a few questions in my mind. Thank you all for your explanations.
Thank you, Member Matthews. Member Couture.
Thank you, Chair Hill. I appreciated the explanation about, because I was a little bit surprised to see the proposed addition. And I am presuming, and I would like to have this confirmed, that the, I'll call it the enclosed sunroom at the front was pre-existing. I mean, it looks like it's being resurfaced in some cases, but I'm presuming it was pre-existing.
Yeah.
And I can certainly appreciate, given the timelines these days with planning, because of short-staffed, that if you can do part of it without requiring a variance, you can at least start your project and then wait for the variance to hopefully get approved to do the additional deck. But in this situation, having that deck join the enclosed sunroom and the addition that's currently being built would just make sense. And given the rather large sliding doors that have been already installed in this building, it'd be rather unsafe if you didn't have something on the other side of that door. And so I'm all in favor, and I also think it'll be a much safer environment once that deck is installed.
Thank you, Member Couture. Member Jarvis.
Yeah, I similarly had questions that have been answered, which is great. But my question is with regards to the already existing wooden deck, which has been pointed out to us as non-compliant. If that's correct, I need clarification on that. Would the owner of this property have had to, I mean, in essence, is this building non-compliant as it currently stands with that wooden deck being that distance from the shoreline?
Through you, Chair Hill. Through you, Chair Hill, to Member Jarvis, it is our understanding that the entire structure, inclusive of the other wooden deck, is deemed legally existing non-complying due to the age that it was constructed in. So the entirety of the that structure would be legally existing non-complying. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, but normally that's noted when you in the notes that accompany these things. It says it's a legally non-complying structure to begin with. And I just thought that would be helpful. One other thing in one of the photos, that would be which photo is that? Probably the last photo. I see a lot of what looks like blasted rock. I know that's not part of this application, but I'm a little concerned. I don't know what the blasting policy is out on this lake, but it would appear that blasting's been done in order to accommodate the addition. There, right.
Through you, Chair Hill. It is, from my understanding, this, let me go up here. From my understanding that rock was existing through the rock edge over here. I'm not 100% sure if any blasting did occur as part of this application or as part of the previous application for the proposed addition. Ms. Hoffman, are you able to speak to that at all?
Yeah, so that rock wasn't part of this application. I'm not too sure. I'm assuming like it might have something to, like they've been doing a lot of maintenance around the property as well. But I'm not too sure I'm only kind of really focused on the deck right now.
Just to be clear, the blasting or not blasting is not part of our consideration on this application. So
I know. I wouldn't mind our planning department finding out for us subsequently to this. You're right. My only other concern is with the elevation the way it is, a deck like this is going to really stand out from the water's edge. It's very, very high up, obviously with the topography the way it is. I would have liked to have been able to get out, but I don't have access to Go Home Lake. And was going to try and get to that residence by car, but I realized that would be a bit of a challenge. I still have concerns generally about a number of different things going on here, but I may have an issue with this. I don't think I mean, a deck can be put in.
If you have any,
but anyway, well, leave it for now. We've answered my questions.
Okay, thank you, Member Jarvis. Member Ferguson.
I agree with Member Jarvis that because of the location being water access, it's virtually impossible, since we don't have a boat on Go Home Lake, to do a site inspection. But it certainly would have been quite beneficial to have had some photos of this entire project from the water. What's the view from the canoe look like? How high is it? Nevertheless, I'm led to believe that this deck will not extend beyond the cottage where it is now. It's approximately 32 feet from the water, and it is a deck. Won't be covered. It'll be an open deck, I believe. And so my indication is to support this application.
Thank you, Member Ferguson. Member Demkew.
Yes, thank you, Chair Hill. I tend to voice the same opinion of Member Ferguson. We may well see more in the next application, which I think is the building, unless it's totally different. If the deck is where it is and isn't covered, then I'm okay to support this.
Thank you, Member Demkew. Member Caddo. Member Caddo, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I couldn't get unmuted. I support this. The only question I had, I think Member Matthews, about the way the permit was issued. That's kind of the question I had, but I do support this.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are no further questions or comments on this application, I'll read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment receives Development Services Report 2022-65 and recommends approval of minor variance application A22-05 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 6620 Go Home Lake Shore to permit a deck encroachment of 10.53 meters into the required front yard, where a maximum encroachment of 4 meters is permitted, subject to the following conditions. A, that municipal taxes are paid to date. B, that approval of this variance is granted and fixed to the subject site plan extent, location, and scale, and use contemplated in the application. And C, that a site plan control application be submitted and approved, and that a site plan agreement be executed, detailing the proposed development in the manner prescribed by the applicable policies of the Township of Georgian Bay official plan as they relate to the administration of site plan control. And D, that all approval and that approval of this variance expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the approved structure. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Very well, the motion is carried and the application is approved. Thank you very much for those who participated. And we will move on to our next application, which is application A22-06 for 6992 Go Home Lake Shore. Madam Secretary, do we have everyone in attendance?
I just brought over the applicant's agent, Brian Gauer.
Okay, there you are. We see him now. To the planner, please.
Hello again, Chair Hill and members of committee. I will share my screen. Just confirming everyone can see my screen right now.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. Today, I'm bringing forward to you minor variance application A22-06 for 6992 Go Home Lake Shore. For this minor variance application, the applicant is Lauren Gauer. His agent is Brian Gauer. The address is 6620. Sorry. Apologies, my phone started ringing there. The address is 6620 Go Home Lake Shore. An overview of the proposed application. The purpose of this application is to expand a legally existing and non-complying dwelling with an interior yard setback of 3.87 meters and a front yard setback of 12.69 meters. The proposed development requires relief from zoning provisions for gross floor area expansion, an expansion of 48.91% for a total gross floor area of 131.60 square meters is proposed, while a maximum expansion of 40%, equating to 123.72 square meters gross floor area, is permitted. Here is location of the subject property. It is located on the shoreline of Go Home Lake and is legally described as 6992 Go Home Lake Shore. The area of the subject property is approximately 0.49 hectares and has a frontage along the shoreline of approximately 50 meters. The subject property is serviced privately and is water access only. The subject property is accessed through Go Home Lake, right here, water access, and has an existing cottage, boathouse, 2 bunkies, a shed, and a private septic system, and 3 docks. The boathouse and dock were constructed with the benefit of a building permit. The other structures are legally existing and non-complying. The applicant is proposing an expansion to the existing legally non-complying dwelling on the subject property. The applicant is requesting relief from section 411E 2 of the zoning bylaw, which permits a maximum gross floor area expansion of 40% for structures with a front yard setback of 11 to 15 meters from the high water mark, while the applicant is proposing a gross floor area expansion of 48.91% for the existing dwelling, which is set back approximately 12.69 meters from the high water mark. The existing dwelling has a gross floor area of approximately 88.37 square meters, and the applicant is proposing an expansion of 43.23 square meters for a total gross floor area of 131.60 square meters, when the maximum gross floor area of 123.72 meters is permitted. You can see here the proposed layout to give you a better understanding of where the proposed development is going to be. The proposed expansion is partially located to the rear into the eastern side yard of the property. 7.33 square meters is being added to the rear of the dwelling, and 35.90 square meters is being added to the east side of the dwelling for the total of 131.6 square meters. Please note that a maximum gross floor area of 123.72 meters is permitted, which equates to an expansion of approximately 35.34 square meters. As we can see here, the site plan, the proposed cottage, existing deck here, and the proposed addition. The proposed addition would also be here. In terms of the provincial policy statement, the lands are classified as rural. The district official plan classifies the lands as waterfront with moderate to high archaeological potential. The township official plan designates the property as waterfront and as abutting an over threshold water body with moderate sensitivity to phosphorus. This property is also on Go Home Lake and abuts type 2 fish habitat. The zoning of this property is shoreline residential type 1. In terms of analyzing the provincial policy statement and the district official plan, a planning staff are of the opinion that the proposed minor variance is consistent with the relevant policies in the provincial policy statement, and that the proposed minor variance conforms to applicable policies in the district official plan. Sorry, moving forward here, some better photos for committee. You can see the existing dwelling, and then the arrow is pointing to the approximate location of the dwelling. As we can see here on the side, this is where the side addition would be going. There's trees here. The applicant did indicate that these trees would need to be removed as part of the application. We can see here the rear of the dwelling where the deck is, where the approximate location of the other addition is. And through this photo, we can see here the shoreline. In terms of an analysis for the proposed development against the 4 tests, the first 2 tests in terms of the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw and the official plan, the proposed residential uses are permitted in the waterfront designations and no major impacts are anticipated as a result of this proposal. The uses are compatible with the surrounding low-density residential uses, and the proposal does not require any expansion to municipal services. The proposed addition does not encroach further into the legal non-complying front yard setback. Some trees will be removed to accommodate the proposed addition. However, some will remain along the shoreline frontage to aid in maintaining some naturalization of shoreline views. Additionally, there are large mature trees around the rear and sides of the dwelling which aid in underdeveloped appearance of the entire lot. Staff do note that the proposed development will be subject to site plan control pursuant to policies under section D223 of the official plan, which identify moderate sensitivity of Go Home Lake to phosphorus. No study is required regarding fish habitat type 2. The intent on section 411E is to allow legal non-complying dwellings to expand while recognizing the impact of expansions is increasing closer to the dwelling. Let me repeat that. The intent of section 411E is to allow legal non-complying dwellings to expand while recognizing that the impact of expansions is increased the closer the dwelling is to the water. In this case, the dwelling is set back approximately 12.69 meters, and the expansion will partially be screened by existing vegetation along the shoreline. The proposed addition does not increase existing building height and does not exceed maximum lot coverage. While the proposed addition does increase the width of the dwelling by 4.25 meters, it does not exceed the established maximum width under section 411E of the zoning bylaw, which permits a maximum expansion of 6 meters. Additionally, a portion of the expansion is situated behind the dwelling, which is not visible from the shoreline. There are also no anticipated visual or environmental impacts to shoreline views or environmental features. Staff are of the opinion that the intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw are maintained. Test 3 refers to the appropriateness of development given the existing conditions on the property and if it is keeping with the interest of the community and the public. The intent of the application is to expand the existing dwelling, which is a permitted residential use, which is desirable and appropriate for waterfront development. The proposed expansion is partially screened by existing trees along the shoreline and has no foreseeable environmental impacts. Staff are of the opinion that the proposed variances are appropriate and desirable. Test 4B minor. This is not just a numerical determination, but minor can be evaluated through a determination of impact. The proposed addition does not encroach further into the required front yard, does not increase the height of the existing dwelling, and does not exceed the allowable width expansions for legally existing non-complying dwellings. The proposed expansion has no foreseeable environmental impacts. The visual impacts are minor as the proposed expansion is partially screened by existing vegetation and is located behind the existing dwelling. Further, the proposed addition maintains the general low-density residential character of the waterfront designation, and staff are of the opinion that the proposed variances are minor. Therefore, staff recommend that the application be approved to facilitate an addition to the legally existing non-complying dwelling by permitting a maximum gross floor area of 131.60 square meters, equating to a 48.91% expansion, while 123.72 square meters, equating to an expansion of 40%, is permitted, subject to the following conditions. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation. I will be able to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gatzos. Another good presentation. Madam Secretary, has there been any correspondence on this application?
No correspondence has been received.
Okay. Is the applicant present, and would they like to add any comments to what the planner has provided so far?
We have the applicant's agent present, Brian Gauer.
Please go ahead, Mr. Gauer, if you have anything to add.
Hi, I have nothing to add. Thank you. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you very much. And seeing no members of the public, I will close the public portion of this application review and bring the matter before the committee for any questions or concerns. And we will begin with Member Jarvis.
Thank you. I appreciate this. I note that in this application, we've got the comment that it is legal non-compliant to begin with. The expansion to me is not a big deal. I do have a note, Catherine, at the top of your presentation, you had the wrong address. You gave the address for the previous application, and I think we should correct that.
Yes, I apologize.
No problem.
Through
Okay.
Chair Hill.
Yeah. And yeah, I have no questions or issues with this application.
Thank you very much. Member Kuchar.
Thank you, Chair Hill. I note that I apologize for my system of measurement, but the existing cottage is like 900 square feet in that ballpark. So when you add 400 square feet, it makes for impressive percentage, but in the end, it's still quite an on-site, modest cottage, in my opinion, and so therefore I have no objections to this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Kuchar. Member Caddo.
Yes, no problem, Chair. I'm going to support this.
Thank you, Member Caddo. Member Ferguson.
I also have no objection to this application.
Thank you, Member Ferguson. Member Demkew.
Thank you, Chair Hill. I just wanted to apologize for my mistake on the previous statement on the previous application that I had put these two numbers together as far as addresses, and that's an old timer's problem, I guess. Anyway, I have no problem with this current one.
Thank you, Member Demkew. Member Matthews.
Thank you, Chair Hill. Yeah, I don't really have a problem. I realized that if the back addition, if the original deck was a little bit higher, it would have been included in the gross floor area, and we would have been compliant and wouldn't even need to be before us today. So I would support this.
Thank you, Member Matthews. As that is all the comments, I will read the resolution. It was moved by Member Jarvis and seconded. Be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment receives Development Services Report 2022-63 and that recommends approval for minor variance application A22-06 to zoning bylaw 2014-75 as amended for 6992 Go Home Lake Shore to facilitate an addition to a legally existing non-compliant dwelling by permitting a maximum gross floor area of 131.60 square meters, 48.91%, where 123.72 square meters or 40% is permitted, subject to the following conditions. A, that municipal taxes are paid to date. B, that approval of this variance granted and fixed to the subject site plan extent, location, scale, and use contemplated in the application. And C, that a site plan control application be submitted and approved and that a site plan agreement be executed detailing the proposed development in the manner proposed by the applicable policies of the Township of Georgian Bay official plan as they relate to the administration of site plan control. And D, that approval of this variance expires 3 years from the date of decision if building permits have not been issued for the approved structure. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Thank you very much. The application is approved. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of the applications that were before the committee today. I have one final resolution before me, and it was moved by Member Ferguson and seconded that be it resolved that the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of Adjustment does now adjourn at 11:44 a.m. until September 16th of 2022 at 10 a.m. or at the call of the chair. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you very much. That motion is carried.